We all know that student, the one who never responds to our typical classroom management techniques, the one who is a regular visitor to the principal's office, the one who seems bent on making our lives as teachers miserable. I want to know, why does a child need to act out? How can I shape the child's behavior to fit socially acceptable norms? The key: applied behavior analysis, or ABA, may be the key to solving the problem. Follow this guide through the ABA process for your students on the autism spectrum. Why use applied behavior analysis? Every behavior has a purpose, and ABA can show us what that function is. What is the function of the behavior? A behavior can provide access to attention, access to tangibles, escape or avoidance, as stimulation. Why use applied behavior analysis? By identifying the trigger or antecedent for the behavior and the consequence that reinforces it, we can use evidence-based methods to develop a plan for behavior modification. Let's look at the ABCs: antecedent, behavior, and consequence. We need to observe the child. Note what happens immediately before the behavior, that's the antecedent, and immediately after the problem behavior, that's the consequence. Look at the ABCs. We have an antecedent where the teacher assigns a task. The child proceeds to tear the paper. The consequence is that the child avoids the demand and gets attention. Review your data. We're looking for a pattern or several patterns in the child's behavior. Look for patterns in the child's behavior. What are the distinct behaviors the child exhibits? Does the behavior occur across all locations? If not, what do the locations where it occurs have in common? Does it occur only when certain people are present, or is it universal? Does the behavior occur more frequently or intensely during specific times of the day? Does the behavior occur during both preferred and non-preferred activities? Select the first behavior to be addressed. Why use applied behavior analysis? By defining the behavior in measurable terms, we can track that behavior and use the data to assess the success or failure of an intervention. Define the behavior in observable and measurable terms. Examples: the child leaves the chair without permission. The child remains off task for more than 10 seconds. And a non-example: the child bothers others. What do you want to change about the behavior? You can choose to increase, decrease, or replace the behavior. You will show this by measuring its frequency, how often it happens, intensity, how strong is it, or both. Now you need to select an intervention. Commonly used interventions include incentives, timeout, and peer interventions. Reinforcers or incentives. Work with the child to determine a list of choice reinforcers. They should have positive reinforcement value. The child must want it. The reinforcers may lose their effectiveness and need to be replaced. Let the child select the reinforcer to be used during each monitoring period. Include natural consequences if possible. Use a token economy system to gain access to larger reinforcers. 4 reinforcement schedules. Fixed ratio. Reinforcement is given after a fixed number of correct responses. It works like your frequent flyer miles. Variable ratio. Reinforcement is given after a random number of correct responses. It works like a slot machine. Fixed interval. Reinforcement is given on a regular time schedule. It works like a weekly paycheck. Variable interval. Reinforcement is given on a random time schedule. Works like finding coins on the sidewalk. Which schedule should I use? With the fixed ratio, the desired behavior slows immediately following reinforcement, then begins to increase again. With the variable ratio, the desired behavior is highest of all the schedules. With the fixed interval, the desired behavior increases as the end of the interval approaches. And with the variable interval, the desired behavior is demonstrated at a low but steady rate. What is timeout? It is a behavior modification technique. It removes the child from a reinforcing stimulus. It attempts to minimize the occurrence of the undesired behavior. What is timeout? There are 4 categories of timeouts: inclusion, exclusion, seclusion, and restrained. Inclusion timeout. The student remains with the group to observe instruction. The student is not allowed to participate during the short timeout period. The student is not allowed to receive reinforcement during the timeout period. And the student observes the appropriate behavior displayed by classmates. Common inclusion timeout techniques. Withdrawal of materials. Remove the reinforcing items. An example, the child is sliding the chair around the room, so you remove the chair and allow the child to stand. Contingent observation. The child is removed to a nearby area to observe the lesson or activity without participating. See the child at a desk just off the circle carpet with full view of both instruction and classmates. Planned ignoring. You ignore the misbehavior while reinforcing appropriate behaviors. Ignore the shoes and socks on the floor while reinforcing time on task. Finally, a timeout ribbon, where the child wears a ribbon or wristband which indicates they can receive reinforcement. Misbehavior means giving up the ribbon and the reinforcement for a short period of time. Exclusion timeout. Woolery and Associates described this technique. Remove the student from the instructional activities. Separate the student physically and visually from the group, but within the classroom. The student can hear but not observe or participate in instruction. The student is unable to observe other students' behaviors. Now Van Houten and O'Neill found that exclusion timeout decreased challenging behaviors in the classroom. Seclusion timeout. The student is removed from the classroom and placed in a timeout room for a specified length of time. According to Florida statutes, seclusion does not include timeout used as a behavior management technique intended to calm a student. Studies in the educational setting show mixed results as to the effectiveness of seclusion on decreasing aggressive behaviors. And it should only be used by trained staff following established policy guidelines. Florida statutes prohibit public school personnel from using seclusion. Florida statutes specify that restraint does not include briefly holding a student in order to calm or comfort the student, or physically escorting a student to a safe location. Use of physical or mechanical restraint is prohibited except by authorized personnel and only when all positive interventions have failed and the student's behavior poses an immediate threat. Use of restraints must be reported as an incident report within 24 hours of the occurrence. Peer interventions. Teaching children with typical behaviors to guide the behaviors of students with atypical behaviors can be rewarding to both partners. While peers learning from peers can be more impactful than learning from adults, this is an intervention more suited to slightly older students and supported classrooms. Preschoolers in a self-contained classroom lack peers with typical behaviors. For preschool students with autism, individual group contingencies may be a better choice. Students can see those classmates exhibiting appropriate behavior being rewarded, and the teacher is describing the proper behavior as it is rewarded.